I am Patrick Jaguar, and this is the Cosmic Alchemist Astrology YouTube channel. So, thank you for tuning in today, and thank you to everybody who's watching right now and who will watch this later. So, I want to get into solar eclipse. So, I'm making this video on Tuesday, April the 18th, 2023. We're going to have a solar eclipse. Late tomorrow, Wednesday, April the 19th, 2023. So it's going to be about just after 11 p.m. Eastern time here on the east coast of the US. We'll have a solar eclipse. So this is a pretty interesting eclipse here, and it's going to be, so I read primarily, if you're not familiar with me and my channel and the way I do astrology, I read primarily sidereal. So that's the visible sky astrology. So if the degrees and the signs all sound wrong, that's on purpose. I'm using a different zodiac. And for thousands of years, really, astrologers use different zodiacs. Like, I've been studying Babylonian astrology lately. They actually used to use 5 different zodiacs back then. So I do look at the tropical astrology is the mainstream Western astrology. And that zodiac is used to measure daylight because it is synced up with the seasons. But what I'm doing, I'm reading the visible sky. So don't get too upset if the signs and the degrees are wrong. All right. So let's get to it. So sidereally, this eclipse takes place 5 degrees of Aries. So solar eclipses are also new moons. A new moon, the way I look at a new moon, it's basically a conception. So it's something that has its beginning in the dark. And what a new moon is, it's when sun and moon conjunct. So basically, the moon comes between the earth and the sun, and you can't see them. It's in shadow. You can't see it. And with the eclipse, same kind of thing. You've got this alignment. You've got this alignment of sun, moon, in the earth. So with the new moon, it's a new beginning, but it's a conception. You know, I look at full moons as births. So in the full moon, you've got the full light of the sun reflecting off of the surface of the moon. Now, in a birth is a beginning. A birth is a very apparent, visible beginning. A new moon, the conception, it's this beginning. It takes place in the dark. It's not apparent. It has to develop into something before you can really see what's going on. So that's the way I look at these. Now, eclipses, because again, solar eclipse and new moon, they always happen at the same time on the same day. Solar eclipses, it's kind of a reset, because what happens with the solar eclipse? The light of the sun gets darkened. So we get this momentary disconnection from the sun. The sun is the macrocosm of our individual souls. It's basically the soul of the cosmos. So we get this disconnection from it. And this is why in the past people had a sense of, dread and foreboding about eclipses. And what you'll notice too, if you're ever somewhere where there's what's the word I'm looking for? When there's a total eclipse that's visible in your area, in the locality you're in, you'll notice actually that the birds, the insects, and the animals, they get very quiet when the light of the sun is obscured. So it kind of slows everything down. It gives us pause. And it's this temporary disconnection from the soul. Now, when you're dealing with new moons, when you're dealing with eclipses, whether solar or lunar, it also deals with just wiping the slate clean. So you know the sun and the moon, especially when the moon is full or it's bright, they're putting this light on you. You've got a spotlight in your face. Now, light illuminates things, it brings clarity, but light also blinds us. And, you know, the moon being the mind, the sun being the soul, the light of our own minds and souls even blinds us sometimes. And we get these periodic breaks where we get this darkening. And what this enables us to do, it enables us to basically take inventory of what's going on in our inner world, in our souls, in our minds. What insight, what information are we getting from them? It's like hitting the reset button. And so you get these eclipse cycles every 6 months. You get a solar every 6 months. You get a lunar every 6 months. And then the solars and lunars, they follow each other by about 2 weeks. So it's a bit of a reset. It helps us from going insane. Just like the retrogrades of the planets, especially a Mercury retrograde. Mercury's the intellect. It floods all this information in. It goes retrograde so we can basically stop the information flow and go back and review and integrate. So eclipses are like this too. It's basically an integration period. It brings things to our attention too. But yeah, in the past, there was a lot of fear around them. You know, if you've ever seen the movie Apocalypto, it's a movie about basically how the Aztecs were abusing their neighbors. You had this Aztec empire in Mexico, in Central America. And the main characters in this movie are from a neighboring tribe. And one day, their village gets attacked by Aztec warriors. And a bunch of the men, well, actually, the men and the women get taken as slaves by the Aztecs. And they get walked to, you know, present day Mexico City. And towards the end of the movie, there's a scene where these men from this village, from this neighboring tribe, they're getting walked up to the Pyramid of the Sun, and the Aztec high priest is basically, with the help of his acolytes, he's conducting blood sacrifices on these tribesmen, and he's cutting their hearts out. And he's doing it because there's a complete solar eclipse. And he's basically doing it to appease the sun god so that the sun will come back out and the light will come back out. So eclipses have an effect on people where when the light stops, when the information flow stops, you basically have to sit with your feelings. And the whole world is geared towards giving us distractions so we never deal with our feelings. Because if people dealt with their feelings and their emotions, deep state, the globalists, whatever the hell you want to call them, they'd be sunk. What they do is they maintain the current world order by manipulating people's addictions, and addictions keep people from dealing with their emotions. So yeah, if people ever dealt with their feelings, the whole world would change, or enough people ever did. And we're getting closer to that, but there's still not a lot of people out there who want to do that. So anyway, a little bit about solar eclipses in general. So this one, again, sidereally, 5 degrees Aries. The tropical is going to be 29 Aries. So that's 29th degree, miracle degree. But I want to focus more on the sidereal here. So, but yeah, that tropical, it's right before, it's the degree before the sun goes into Taurus. So, but yeah, the sidereal eclipse, 5 degrees Aries, it's going to be a Rahu eclipse. Rahu, another name for that, north node of the moon, dragon's head. So the dragon's head, Rahu, what it does is it consumes things. It brings new things in. So eclipses dealing with the north node bring new things in. Eclipses dealing with the south node, the dragon's tail, K2, they cut things loose. They get rid of things. So this eclipse is about bringing in a new dynamic into our lives, into the world too. So this eclipse Rahu is causing the shadow. Also in Aries and sidereal Aries at the time will be Mercury. Mercury will be almost stopped, almost stationed, getting ready for its retrograde on the 21st. And then Uranus will be in there too. So Mercury and Uranus within 2 degrees, we got a conjunction there. That's interesting. And Jupiter will be on this day, 29 Pisces, getting ready to come into Aries. So only, 6 degrees away from this eclipse. Getting very close. Jupiter's Gandanta. Gandanta, it means a knot. It can deal with the energy of boiling or like drowning. So Gandanta is when planets switch from water signs to fire signs. So last 2 degrees of the water sign, first two of the fire sign. So Pisces is water, Aries is a fire. So basically the water boils. You get steam in those 4 degrees that straddle the beginning of the water, the end of the water sign and the beginning of the fire. So you got that going on, and then you also have Venus conjunct Aldebaran, one of the royal stars. And then you've got a Mars in Gemini. So a lot of different things going on here. So that Mars in Gemini, it's going through communications in the media with a fine-tooth comb. Mars is also a detective. Mars is a surgeon, goes beneath the surface and looks at what's going on at a deeper level. And Venus conjunct Aldebaran. Aldebaran's the royal star in Taurus. It's the, what is it? The eye of the bull. And this is a star dealing with wealth, fame, prosperity, all that stuff. The lesson with Aldebaran is like you can have these things, but if you get stuck on them, if you get obsessed, you're going to lose them. And then Jupiter getting ready to go to Aries. Jupiter is a giver of gifts. Jupiter expands whatever it's near. So Aries is initiative. Aries is initiative. It's the fire under our asses in life. It's initiative. It's asserting yourself. It's being assertive. It's getting up to do things. Aries is also, it's the head. So it's what goes on in the head. So Jupiter is the teacher, the spiritual teacher, the guru, the priest of the zodiac. So Jupiter is going to bring spiritual insights into our heads, get us thinking differently. So that's pretty interesting. So a lot of layers here. Now also, Saturn, within 5 degrees, will put a sextile onto this eclipse. So Saturn is over at 10 degrees Aquarius. So sextile is a 60-degree aspect. So Saturn is what? It's about 55 degrees away. So it's not a strong aspect, but there is an influence. So what does Saturn do? Saturn is all about limitations and restrictions. And Saturn doesn't do this, to be a dick, to make our lives unbearable. Saturn is the judge, the prosecutor, the law enforcer of the cosmos. The law that it enforces, it's spiritual law, natural law, but most importantly, it's your own personal law, your origin law, your orlog. From Germanic spirituality, we have this term orlog. Your orlog is what you came into this world to do. It's your most genuine life path. When you step off that genuine life path, you get hammered by Saturn. Saturn comes in, teaches you a lesson, gives you delays and setbacks. It has your plans blow up in your face. And it does this to you to keep you honest. Now, this 60-degree aspect, this sextile, it's a harmonious aspect. So this influence of Saturn on this eclipse is constructive. So what we're having on this new moon and solar eclipse, this 5 degrees sidereal Aries, we're getting what is being conceived is a new way of thinking. It's going to be a new way of acting based on not just information, but spiritual insight. Because again, Aries is the fire under the ass. It's taking initiative. It's asserting yourself. Now, the sign before it, Pisces, the 12th sign, is the energy feeding in there in that cyclical fashion. So Pisces is very deep, unconscious spiritual insight. So that energy is going to fuel, or has the potential to fuel our actions going forward and our thinking, what's going on in our heads going forward. So this eclipse is a big opportunity, a new way of thinking, a new way of acting, a new beginning. So Jupiter coming into Aries on the verge, new beginning. And again, eclipses, these solar eclipses are new beginnings. So what we have the ability to do is to draw upon our spiritual insights, our intuition, and start something new in life. Now, there's a lot of new information coming to light here. You know, the scamdemic's falling apart. The needlecraft program is pretty much falling apart. This bogus war that was started by NATO in Ukraine is falling apart. This war is benefiting the mega conglomerates, mega corporations of Western Europe and America. That's falling apart. A lot of this stuff's falling apart. The information's coming out. The US is basically, it's come out, the US is spying on and backstabbing its allies, which allies are always doing to each other, but it's coming out into the open. So we have an opportunity to relate to the world differently. You know, you've got all this died suddenly coming on, you know, right now. Jamie Foxx is inexplicably the actor. He's, you know, I mean, you look at the guy, it looks like he takes care of himself. He's in good shape. Well, he's been in the hospital for days with complications like relating to a stroke. Well, that's got something to do with the needlecraft. I hope he's not part of the died suddenly phenomenon, but people are getting more aware of this, and you know, people are getting a little freaked out. So this eclipse is a way to reorient our thinking, again, with the help of these spiritual insights and this deep intuition that Jupiter is bringing out of Pisces into Aries. So pretty neat. But getting back to Saturn, what Saturn is doing, again, shedding the 60-degree aspect on the eclipse, Saturn is helping us to keep it real. So Saturn doesn't deny us happiness or progress in our lives, but Saturn only lets us have, well, Saturn will let us have things that are not genuine, but they come with a lesson. They eventually blow up in our faces. The things that Saturn lets us have and keep are the things that are really genuine, things that we deeply, truly want on a deep mental level, on a deep soul level. So Saturn is basically sitting there saying during this eclipse, okay, I know you've got all these crazy ideas because it's a Rahu eclipse. Rahu is the trickster. Rahu is the master of desires. Rahu has all these insights and ideas and wants to do all these new things. So you've got that going on. You've got also Uranus and Mercury in there. Mercury's the intellect. Uranus is a higher form of Mercury. So Uranus is the higher octave of Mercury. Uranus is healthy rebellion. Uranus is the planet beyond Saturn. Saturn is the last visible planet. It rules the 3D. So Saturn rules the order of the world, and it deals with following the rules. It deals with conformity. You get past Saturn, you get to Uranus. You don't want to conform anymore. You don't want to be, you know, your parents' idea of who you are. You want to be your real self. So you have some healthy rebellion. So you can start discovering who you are. So that's Uranus. So it's this higher order of Mercury. So it's about taking the thinking, the intellectualizing of Mercury, bringing it to another level so that we can gain awareness of ourselves and our lives. And we can say, you know what? I don't want to follow Saturn's rules. I don't want to follow mom and dad's rules. I don't want to follow the rules of my friends and coworkers. I just want to be me, God damn it. So we have all this going on in Aries. So it's a lot of rocky, topsy-turvy, fiery energy. But Saturn is keeping it chill, and it's keeping the impulsiveness down, and it's saying, hang on a minute, don't get lost in the bullshit. What is it that you really want? So this is a good aspect. Now, an interesting thing about this eclipse here, the visibility, it'll begin in the southern Indian Ocean. It'll be visible in Antarctica. And it's making kind of a shallow, you see in the thumbnail, I got the graphic. It's kind of a shallow northeasterly course. So it's going to be visible in West Australia, Northern Australia, and then the eclipse will actually cross the equator. It'll be visible in Indonesia and even the southern Philippines. So this eclipse is going to start in the southern hemisphere. It's going to cross the equator just into the northern hemisphere. So it's not going to make significant ingress into the northern hemisphere, but it will cross the equator, the visibility of it. So this to me too, when I'm looking at the course of it, it's about things coming up from below. Because when you look at the energetics of the earth and you compare them to the body, the North Pole is the head. It's the negative receptive pole where the energy comes in. And then the South Pole is the positive pole. So it's like the pelvis where the energy comes out and actually wraps around and comes into the North Pole. So you've got this, it's like the energy, it's like the magnetic field in a bar magnet. Your body has the same one, the planet has the same one too. So North Pole is the receptive pole, the head. South Pole is the kind of the projective pole, the pelvis. So when you look at it that way, another thing too is that below the equator is basically the unconscious. So it's like above the equator, it's like our conscious self. It's the thinking mind in the head. Below the equator, it's more unconscious. So the unconscious is the cellular memory and the intelligence of the body. That's one of the things it strongly has to deal with. So when I look at eclipses and I see visibility in the southern hemisphere, to me, it's about things that are going on in the unconscious. Things are stirring in the unconscious. When eclipses happen in the northern, they're visible in the northern hemisphere. It's more about things that we can put our conscious thinking mind on and sort of analyze and dissect and do all that stuff with. But then when they cross hemispheres, it's about something from the deep intuitive unconscious coming up to the conscious to be dealt with. So, and it's interesting because when you look at the fixed stars that are involved, it speaks to this more. So there will be a fixed star exactly conjunct with this solar eclipse / new moon. So the star is called Alrisha. Alrisha in sidereal, it's 5 degrees Aries. In tropical, it's 29 Aries. But in the visible sky, it's 5 degrees Aries. And because of that, even though it's in the sign of Aries, part of some of the stars in the sign of Aries are actually spillovers from Pisces. So when you look up in the sky and you see the actual constellation Aries, it's a pretty small constellation. But it has these degrees around, to make a full sign, you have a 30-degree segment of the sky. So some of the stars from Pisces from the constellation Pisces spill over into the sign Aries. So this Alrisha, it's called the well rope. So a well rope. So imagine an old-fashioned well for drinking water. It's a hole in the ground, and it's got a bucket, and you lower the bucket on a rope. So the well rope. You lower the bucket, it dips into the water, and then you pull it back up. So you pull on the rope, you bring the bucket back up full of water. Well, water deals with emotion. Subterranean water deals with deep unconscious emotion. So it's very Piscean. It has to do with Pisces. So this star, this Alrisha, in the constellation Pisces, it's actually the knot in the cord that runs between the two fish of Pisces. So the fish are connected by a cord. This cord is called the well rope. So this eclipse dealing with this well rope, it's all about bringing deep emotional, spiritual, intuitive insight up from the deep subterranean waters, Pisces, up to the conscious thinking, Aries. So, and it's interesting. So the path of the eclipse crossing the southern hemisphere to the northern totally speaks to this too. These things are very synchronous. So pretty neat. The fixed star Alrisha, it has the qualities of Mars and Mercury. So it's got the vitality, fieriness, aggressiveness of Mars. And then it has the thinking, the communication of Mercury. So they're going to be in media, you're going to see people really digging into things. You're going to see angry communication, aggressive communication, all that kind of stuff. Now, another thing about Alrisha, it is it deals with the crux holding things together. So that's interesting. So the crux holding things together. When you look at what organizes the modern world, it's really information. And all that information is based on a set of assumptions. So it's like the crux of the world that holds everything together is our assumptions of the world. And, most people, they don't get a chance to look behind the curtain of this, our little human reality that we have in this world. They get their information about the world from news media or just from like what their parents told them, what school told them. So, they've never worked in government, they've never worked in finance, they've never dealt with extremely wealthy people, influential people, politicians. They've never been in the military. Most people have never been outside their country. So everything they know about the world outside of their community, it's based on assumptions. It's based on the assumption that they've been given the real information by school, their parents, and the media. But usually school, your parents, the media, they feed you a lot of their own prejudice that was fed to them. So they've never really they've never really been outside their country and, in these positions where you get to see what's really going on behind the scenes. So the world runs on a bunch of assumptions. So the way I see this, these deep Piscean insights, intuitions, emotions, spiritual, epiphanies, we have the opportunity to have our fundamental assumptions about how everything works and how we orient ourselves within the world. We have the opportunity to challenge all that and reorient how we deal with the world, reorient our lives. That's a big opportunity. It can be scary, but life's not supposed to be easy. You are supposed to have fun and joy in your life, but life's not supposed to be easy either. Sometimes you have to deal with discomfort. And you have to have humility. You have to admit that there's a lot you don't know. You have to be willing to change your ideas about things. So this eclipse is an opportunity for that if you choose to make use of it. Okay, now what else? Alrisha, being this well rope, it's also described as a lifeline thrown to those who are adrift. So we can feel within our own inner worlds of our emotions, especially, we can feel very much adrift. We can feel overwhelmed. We can feel that we have no idea what to do with ourselves, what to do with our lives. We can feel stuck, in our jobs and in certain situations in our lives. And we have no idea what the next step is. We know we want to be happier, but we don't know what a really good next step is in order to promote that happiness. Very common. I've spent a lot of time there. So this eclipse, it's basically a lifeline being thrown to us. If we're receptive, we can basically a seed of that insight can be planted. Probably not going to come all at once. Things will happen in the world. We will get a lot of new information out of nowhere, but changing the course of your life, it takes some time. So this eclipse, it's a planting of a seed. It's the germination of a seed. It's a conception. Okay. So yeah. Now another thing, Aries being ruled by Mars, it's the sign of, combativeness, warfare, all that stuff. So it's like, yeah, it looks like there's a lot of shit ratcheting up in the world. Looks like America's ready to go to war with the entire world. I think that's a giant bluff. Abusive narcissists and psychopaths, what they do is they play mind games with the people in their lives. So they're always making a threat, and they're basically saying, you better do things my way, or there's going to be problems and you'll be sorry. So the United States is doing that. They're making a war plan to go to war with Russia. They're making plans to go to war with Iran. They're making plans to go to war with North Korea, to go to war with China. It's impossible. If any of these wars get launched, they're going to be fucking disasters. There's already U.S. troops on the ground in Ukraine, and that war is not going well for Ukraine and its NATO allies. So the U.S. right now, the U.S. government and military, which is getting dragged along with it, at the behest of Wall Street and the mega conglomerates, in Fortune 500, all these giant companies. They don't want to lose their market shares, and they're dragging the U.S. government and the military towards war. And they're trying to use the U.S. military as a bluff. They're basically other companies from other countries who want to compete with them. They're basically threatening them. They're saying, you better get in line and do what the U.S. and Britain says, like most of the world has for the last 75 years, or you're going to be sorry. Well, the world's going to call this bluff. So yeah, we're not going to have the nuclear, disaster kickoff here. So don't worry about that. But definitely some hate and discontentment in the world here. So yeah, that's all pretty interesting. Now, another thing I want to talk about here. A way you can think about eclipses in general. When you have an eclipse on or near your birthday, it means something major will happen in your life. So, April 19th, this eclipse happens. Even like spilling into the 20th. So it's like April 19th and 20th here on the East Coast of the US. For a lot of the world, it'll just be the 20th. So what's April 20th? Well, people will answer, oh, that's Earth Day. Well, it has been Earth Day for quite some time. What it was before Earth Day was Hitler's birthday. So Adolf Hitler was born April 20th, 1889. Now, he's been dead for many years. There's some crazy ass QAnon people who will tell you that, he got into the interior of the earth and he's still alive, and they have all the med beds and regenerative, medical technology, and he's still alive. No, very much doubt that. But he's got a legacy. And I think what's interesting is when you look at the billionaire environmentalists, like Bill Gates, Jeff Bezos, the recently deceased, what's his name? Prince Philip, Queen Elizabeth's husband. Even, Queen Elizabeth herself, when you look at these people are, yeah, they're environmentalists, but they're also misanthropes. So they really hate humanity. And Prince Philip was very active with the World Wildlife Federation, even after being a big game hunter in Africa for years. And back in the 80s, he told a journalist that if reincarnation's real, he'd like to come back as a deadly virus that would decimate the human population in order to save the earth and the natural environment. We all know about Bill Gates. If he ever goes back to India, he's going to be arrested because so many people died after participating in his needlecraft programs. He loves to use the needlecraft to help reduce the population in Africa, which, he would like to turn into a giant national park. And Jeff Bezos would like to turn the earth into a national park by making us, live in space and build microchips for him. So, in an earth orbit. So that's the thing is your day-to-day environmentalists you meet on the street, they're very well-intentioned people, and they don't want to live in a world where the food, the air, and the water are fucking poisoned. That's a no-brainer. Now, even some of the people at that level really do hate human beings, just your working class environmentalist. But they don't have the power to really do anything to large amounts of humans. But these billionaires, these billionaire misanthropes, these billionaire haters of humanity, who they're basically Gnostics, and they see the world as a prison, and they see humans as a virus and a cancer and a plague on the planet. They don't consider, well, we could use this fucking television that's made everyone stupid. We could use it to teach people about how to treat the earth better. Well, they don't want to do that. So they just want to kill people. So I think these driving forces, behind the establishment of something like Earth Day, I think they deliberately chose Hitler's birthday. Nazi Germany was funded in large part by Wall Street. So Wall Street loves socialist left-wing movements because the left wing and socialists, they always need a loan. So does the right, but the left is more ambitious. They need bigger loans. So, Wall Street they love left-wing movements. They love socialism because they need huge loans, and they're always making proposals to have a centrally planned world where everybody's life is organized and planned for them. So, yeah, I think this Earth Day being Hitler's birthday is no accident. And I think too, even with, the 420, man, I'm going to stick it to the man, because 420, it's like it's the national, weed smoking day. I think that is even a way to get people to feed energy into the legacy, to the memory of Hitler in Nazi Germany. The Nazis started the hippie movement anyway. Half of Central Intelligence in the early years was a bunch of escaped Nazis. And I think they created the whole hippie movement, the peace sign. it's a Germanic rune that's upside down. It's actually the rune Alhiz or Elhaj. It's the rune of energetic protection, shamanic protection. The peace symbol is the this rune of protection turned upside down and contained in a circle. So yeah, hippie movement's a total Nazi creation. Um, so yeah, you've got the environmentalists and you've got the stoners all feeding energy into the memory and legacy of Hitler, and they don't even know it. So I think something about that could come to life, that these billionaire environmentalists are very fascist. They're, they're not just national socialists, they're basically global socialists. And they have undesirables that they would like to get rid of, which is most of the human population. So, and I was just reading a book called Nazi International by Dr. Joseph Farrell. And I probably shouldn't show the cover because, YouTube's so woke. But what he points out is that, the Nazis were one of the most influential groups within NASA. And really, they very likely took control of it during the 1960s. So during the 1960s, with the moon missions, there were two very important lunar landings that took place on April 20th, one in 1967 and one in 1972. So April 20th, 1967 was the landing of Surveyor 3. It was a probe that was landed on the moon to take soil samples and God knows what else. It was unmanned. And then, so that was paving the way, and then what? Apollo 11, that was in July 1969, which is the anniversary of the Putsch. So the Putsch was an attempted coup led by the early Nazi Party in 1923 in Munich. That was on the anniversary of that, oddly enough. And then April 20th, 1972, that was the landing of Apollo, what was that? 16. So Apollo 16, one of the last, I think 17 was the last to go to the moon. So, and when you look at all of the escaped Nazis that were members of NASA, including its head, Werner von Braun, it's no accident that they had so many landings on Nazi anniversaries. And so they were, by doing this and making the whole world aware of it, they were feeding energy into this legacy and this memory of Hitler. So I think we're going to get insights about how the Nazis never went away, and certainly their financial sponsors from the 1920s and 30s, we got the whole thing rolling, never went away. And these same banks and corporations are still around, and they're participating in the Great Reset, the scamdemic, the Needlecraft campaign, and this whole attempt at bringing the world under one order. So there'll be some new information. We'll see what happens. So I'm going to leave it at that. That's a long one, and talk to you later. Take it easy.